Welcome back to Starz Recapped, where we break down the most intense thrillers, hidden gems, and unforgettable stories, one film at a time. In today's video, we're diving into the 2022 psychological thriller, The Man on the Road, a chilling tale of isolation, secrets, and survival. What starts as a simple road trip quickly spirals into a tense game of trust and deception, with twists that will keep you guessing until the very end. So buckle up as we break down the story scene by scene and reveal the shocking truth behind the man and the road he walks. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell icon so you never miss a recap from Starz Recapped. Now let's get into it. The film kicks off with a young girl named Irene, joyfully playing hide-and-seek with her father deep in the woods. Soon after, her dad shows her how to carefully pick wild mushrooms, and she places one gently into her basket. Moments later, Irene stays back to relieve herself, while her father walks ahead toward the nearby road. But when she tries to catch up with him, she reaches the roadside and notices a car parked in the distance. The driver stares at her with an eerie, unsettling expression, before suddenly speeding off. Feeling uneasy, Irene looks around and sees mushrooms scattered on the ground. Then, her eyes lock onto something horrifying. In the distance lies her father's motionless body. The shock is overwhelming, and the traumatic sight leaves a mark that time won't easily erase. The story then fast-forwards a decade. Irene is now a teenager, gearing up for a major swimming competition. Her coach gives her a pep talk, reminding her to hold back some energy for a strong final sprint. As the race begins, Irene dives in and gives it everything she has, determined to win. Despite pushing herself to the limit, Irene falls just short, finishing second in the race. Her rival tries to cheer her up, saying the gap was only a few seconds, but instead of calming Irene down, it fuels her anger. In a fit of rage, Irene lashes out and punches the girl, leaving her with a bloodied face. Later, in the locker room, Irene's coach confronts her. He insists she must apologize or face suspension from the team. But Irene stands her ground, refusing to back down and even becoming hostile toward him. Frustrated by her attitude, the coach snaps and calls her worthless. Afterward, Irene's mother steps in. She suggests Irene take a short break from practice, not just to cool out, also to avoid crossing paths with the girl again. She also urges her daughter to seek professional help, advice Irene has no interest in taking. Sometime later, Irene is lying in bed when her younger sister Pam walks in, innocently asking why she hasn't been going to school or taking part in competitions. But instead of answering, Irene loses her temper and tells her to leave. Their stepfather soon enters the room, demanding to know why she's being so cruel to her sister. Irene coldly responds, saying Pam isn't her real sister, only a half-sibling, making it clear that her resentment runs deep. Irene's mother steps in to calm things down and tells her that if she's not planning to continue her studies, she should consider finding a job. But Irene, still filled with resentment, lashes out, accusing her mother of moving on too quickly and forgetting about her late father. This leads to a heated argument, and in the heat of the moment, her mother slaps her, leaving Irene deeply hurt, not just physically, but emotionally. The story then shifts to Irene arriving at her aunt's house. Her aunt welcomes her with open arms and kindly offers her a place to stay. Grateful for the support, Irene assures her it'll just be temporary until she lands a job. Her aunt agrees and even invites her to join a yoga class she teaches, if she's interested. With nothing else to do that afternoon, Irene decides to attend the session. During the class, a woman named Milana, who seems to be in her mid-40s, complains of neck pain and leaves the session early. Irene strikes up a conversation with her, and Milana opens up about feeling burnt out and struggling to keep up with the demands of her job. Curious, Irene asks what kind of work she does. Milana tells her she's a supervisor at a local factory. Sensing an opportunity, Irene asks if there might be any job openings. Milana says she might be able to help and agrees to take her along. Later on, Milana brings Irene to the factory and begins walking her through the floor, introducing her to the machinery and giving her a quick overview of how things operate. Milana reassures Irene not to stress about the new job, promising to start her off in a department that's easier to handle. Just then, the factory owner, Michael, arrives on site. Milana introduces Irene as a new hire, explaining that she's just getting started. Michael asks a few casual questions, learning that Irene is 18 years old and recently left school. The moment she says her full name, Irene Treviglian, something shifts in Michael's expression. He's clearly shaken, and without another word, he walks off. From there, we see Michael lost in thought, haunted by a memory from his youth. Years ago, during his wild teenage days, he and his friends would regularly get high and pull reckless stunts. One day, he accepted a dare to jump from a tall building in exchange for a bottle of rum. A crowd gathered to watch, and somehow he managed to land safely, earning cheers and winning the bet. Afterward, he spotted a familiar face in the crowd. A young woman named Laura, someone he'd hooked up with before but barely remembered. Using his charm, he convinced her to leave with him. They ended up in his car, and things quickly turned intimate. During their time together, Laura asked if he'd remember her afterward and if he'd ever bring her to his place. But Michael dismissed the idea, making it clear he wasn't looking for anything serious. Feeling humiliated, Laura stormed off, choosing to walk home. However, Michael, sensing regret, called her back and offered to drive her. Since he was drunk, Laura insisted on taking the wheel herself. Back in the present, Laura, now Michael's wife, notices he's uneasy and asks what's bothering him. Michael brushes it off, telling her they've been invited to a dinner by their German client who's looking to finalize a big contract. He suggests she come along, mentioning her sharp legal skills. Laura agrees without hesitation. Later that night, despite lying in bed, Michael is visibly restless, his mind clearly still tangled in memories from the past. The following day, out of the blue, Michael tells Milana that Irene's position has been terminated, claiming the factory doesn't need any additional staff. Surprised, Milana questions whether Irene made a mistake or if Michael knows her personally. But he quickly denies both, brushing it off. Still, Milana insists he allow Irene to complete her probation period. She even offers to take full responsibility, promising to let her go herself if things don't work out. Left with no other option, Michael reluctantly agrees. Meanwhile, Irene is approached by a colleague named Loris, who seems to take an interest in her. He casually asks if she's on social media, but she replies that she doesn't use any. Loris then invites her to hang out sometime, telling her he's usually at a place called Piazza Dante, a local pub. Unbeknownst to them, another worker named Agata watches from a distance, and it's clear she's not thrilled by the interaction, possibly jealous. Later that evening, Michael and his wife Laura attend a formal dinner with a German business associate. But Michael appears disengaged and cold, his attitude unusually dismissive. Sensing tension, Laura steps in to keep the conversation flowing and maintain the charm, worried that Michael's demeanor could jeopardize the deal. The client even makes a subtle flirtatious remark toward Laura, but Michael doesn't seem to notice, or doesn't care. After returning home, Laura confronts her husband about his behavior, accusing him of being disrespectful during such an important meeting. Michael, unfazed, insults the client, calling him a spoiled rich man who's only successful because of family wealth. The next day, Michael comes across an online article about Irene's past, specifically about her time in competitive swimming and the incident where she lost her temper. Meanwhile, Irene visits a nearby swimming facility to clear her mind, the pool being one of the few places where she feels at peace. Soon, a group of swimmers arrives for training, and the coach tells Irene she needs to move to another lane. She follows the instructions quietly, without any fuss, but her effortless strokes and control in the water catch the coach's attention. As she leaves the pool later, Irene spots a familiar figure, Michael, waiting in a car nearby with his driver. She gives him a small, nervous wave, but Michael doesn't acknowledge her. Instead, he gives a cold glance and instructs the driver to move on. The story then shifts to a lively night at the club, where Irene and Loris are seen getting intimate, clearly growing closer with each passing moment. Over the next few days, Irene settles into a steady routine, working her shifts at the factory, sharing flirtatious glances with Loris, and occasionally visiting the pool to swim and clear her head. One morning, as she arrives at the factory, she notices something odd. Her bicycle has a flat tire. Irene quickly suspects that Agata, still bitter and jealous, is behind it, but instead of causing a scene, she keeps her cool and heads straight into work. Later in the day, Irene receives a message from Loris, asking if she wants to sneak away and meet up. Eager for a break, Irene pretends to feel unwell and sets off to find her supervisor to ask for some time off. But instead of her usual manager, she runs into Michael. He asks what's wrong, and Irene tells him she's feeling sick and needs to leave early. However, Michael notices Loris's truck parked just outside the building and immediately puts two and two together. Realizing she's not being honest, He initially denies her request, but Irene doesn't take no for an answer, growing defensive and irritated. Eventually, Michael gives in and allows her to leave. As Irene steps out of the office, she's spotted by Laura, who happens to be visiting the site. Laura seems puzzled, not recognizing the young woman walking out of her husband's workplace. Curious about the girl she just saw, Laura asks Michael who she is. He casually replies that Irene is just a recent hire who needed to leave a bit early. Meanwhile, Irene and Loris are seen relaxing inside his truck after being physically intimate. During their chat, Irene mentions that Michael had spotted Loris's truck earlier while she was asking for time off. This instantly makes Loris nervous. Worried that it might cost him his job, he firmly tells Irene to keep their relationship under wraps and avoid drawing attention at work. The next day, things take a dramatic turn at the factory. Irene is suddenly approached by a visibly pregnant woman who starts shouting accusations, claiming Irene has been sleeping with her husband Loris. Shocked and confused, Irene doesn't back down. She responds sharply, saying Loris has already hooked up with several women at the factory, and even gestures toward Agata as an example. This pushes Agata over the edge. She storms after Irene and starts hurling insults, causing a scene inside the workplace. The situation quickly spirals out of control as Irene and Agata's shouting match turns into a physical altercation. Before things get worse, Michael rushes in and pulls Irene away by force, putting an end to the chaos. He scolds her harshly, warning that she could have seriously injured Agata, but Irene remains silent, refusing to engage. Later, believing she's about to be fired, Irene starts packing up her things, preparing to leave. But to her surprise, Milana tells her that Michael has chosen not to dismiss her. Instead, he's transferred Agata to a different department. Irene is left speechless, confused by the sudden change in attitude. That evening, while biking home, Irene notices a car trailing behind her. It's Michael, but he quickly loses her in traffic. A short while later, Irene unexpectedly appears in his car, startling him. She confronts him directly, demanding to know why he's been following her. Suspecting he has inappropriate motives, she begins to undress, offering herself in exchange for keeping her job. But Michael quickly stops her, saying that's not what he wants at all. He just wanted to make sure she was safe. Irene, puzzled by his concern, changes the subject and says she's hungry, suggesting they grab something to eat. They end up at a small roadside diner. While eating, Irene casually asks why he has a driver instead of driving himself. Michael avoids going into detail, simply saying he doesn't like to drive. During their meal, Michael asks Irene why she gave up swimming, but she doesn't answer, choosing to stay quiet. Trying to open up, Michael shares a bit about himself. He explains that he ended up working in his father's business simply because he didn't have a clear direction in life. He tells Irene that at least she has a passion, something meaningful, and that makes her lucky. But instead of feeling inspired, Irene gets frustrated. She snaps back, saying he doesn't know anything about what she's been through. The following day, Michael approaches her once again, saying he wants to show her something. He takes her to an old, weathered house overlooking the sea. Standing there, he reveals a secret. He dreams of turning the place into a seaside restaurant. He confesses that he wasn't being honest with her before. In fact, he does have a passion, and this is it. As they both look out toward the ocean, they spot a couple walking along shore. Inspired by the moment, Irene quietly takes out her sketchbook and begins drawing the man. While sketching, Michael curiously asks if Irene enjoys drawing. She quietly explains that she's been trying to recreate the face of the man who hit her father with a car 10 years ago. She imagines that the man probably moved on, started a family, built a life, while she was left to deal with the loss. But Michael offers a different perspective. Maybe that man never moved on at all. Maybe he's been living with the guilt ever since. A few days later, after finishing work, Irene spots Michael's car and catches up to him. She jokingly asks why he hasn't been tailing her like before and casually suggests they hang out. But Michael brushes her off, saying he's too busy, before driving away, leaving Irene stunned and hurt. The following day, Irene is back at the pool, just swimming laps. Her coach takes notice and compliments her speed, saying no one else on his team can match her pace. Just then, she sees Michael standing off to the side, clearly waiting for her. When she confronts him, asking why he's there, Michael admits he came to say sorry and hands her a small gift as a peace offering. Irene isn't quick to forgive him, still upset from before. But Michael's sincere effort eventually softens her mood. The two end up spending some time together, playing pickleball and laughing like carefree friends. At one point, they accidentally knock off someone's side mirror during their antics and run off giggling like mischievous kids. For the first time, Irene sees something rare in Michael, a genuine, carefree smile. The next morning, Irene makes a big decision. She accepts her coach's invitation to officially join the swimming team. Excited, she shares the news with Michael, who is genuinely proud and encourages her. Not long after, Michael's wife, Laura, stops by his office and is surprised to see him in such a cheerful mood, something she hasn't seen in a while. Later, after Michael leaves, a suspicious Laura begins snooping through his desk. While going through his files, she stumbles upon Irene's employment documents. As she reads through the details, her expression changes. Something about what she finds clearly rattles her. That evening, when Michael arrives home, Laura greets him with what seems like joyful news. She says she's pregnant. But Michael's reaction is less enthusiastic than she hoped. Though he hugs her, his emotions seem distant. Moments later, Laura admits the truth. She isn't pregnant at all. She just wanted to test whether he still cared about her. She then confronts him angrily, accusing him of getting too close to Irene, who she claims is that man's daughter. Michael stays calm, trying to explain that Irene is simply lost and struggling, and he's only trying to help her find her way. But Laura isn't convinced. She believes there's something more, that his feelings for Irene go beyond concern. Eventually, she lays down a harsh ultimatum. If he wants to save what's left of their marriage and protect their future, he must walk away from Irene, for everyone's sake. A few days later, Irene takes part in a major swimming competition, and this time she gives it everything she has. Her hard work pays off, as she finishes first and is met with cheers from her coach and teammates. But amid the celebration, her eyes search the stands, hoping to spot one particular face, Michael's. Instead, she sees his driver, who gives her a subtle nod, signaling that Michael is waiting just outside. She rushes to find him, and when they finally lock eyes, there's a heavy pause. An unspoken connection passes between them. In that moment, it's clear. What they feel for each other runs deep. Later that evening, Irene, Michael, and the driver toast to her victory. After a few drinks, the driver admits he's had too much and decides to take the night off, leaving Michael and Irene alone. When it's time to head home, Irene asks for a ride, and Michael reluctantly agrees to drive. During the ride, Irene tries to get close to him, testing the boundaries of their connection. Michael initially pulls away, warning her not to cross the line, but as emotions rise, he lets his guard down, only to suddenly stop the car and step out, visibly shaken. He begins apologizing over and over, but Irene is confused, unable to understand what he's truly sorry for. Without warning, Michael jumps back behind the wheel, and with a dark intensity, he begins speeding down the road. Through a flashback, we witness a younger Michael years ago, arguing with Laura outside a car. She had wanted to drive, insisting he was too intoxicated, but Michael had refused, taking the wheel and recklessly hitting the gas. Back in the present, history seems to be repeating itself. Michael races down the road at full speed once again, this time with Irene in the passenger seat. Her face grows pale with fear as she pleads for him to slow down, but he doesn't listen. The scene draws a haunting parallel to that fateful night a decade ago, near the woods. And then the unthinkable happens. It's revealed that Michael was the one responsible for the tragic accident that took Irene's father's life all those years ago. When her father was struck, Michael, in a panic, rushed back into his car, just as young Irene came running toward the road, calling out for her dad. Overcome with guilt, he looked the little girl in the eyes before speeding away, leaving the scene behind, but never forgetting it. Now, in the present, Michael drives Irene to a quiet spot near the woods, the very place where the accident had happened. Irene looks around, puzzled, and asks why he brought her there and how he even knows about this location. When Michael doesn't respond, the truth crashes down on her. Everything makes sense. Michael finally speaks, confessing that not a day has gone by when he hasn't thought about her or the life he took. Overwhelmed with rage, Irene shoves him to the ground and grabs a nearby rock. Trembling with fury, she raises it, ready to strike, to get the justice she's waited a decade for. Michael doesn't move. He accepts whatever is about to happen, believing he deserves it. But in the end, Irene makes a different choice. Instead of harming him, she smashes the window of his car with the rock, unleashing all her anger, and then walks away in silence, leaving Michael to face the weight of his guilt alone. After a long night of walking, Irene finally reaches the hospital just as the sun rises. Exhausted and emotionally drained, she spots her mother, who works there as a nurse, and collapses into her arms, breaking down in tears. Through sobs, she apologizes for the pain she's caused over the years. Her mother gently holds her and quietly reveals something unexpected. Michael had turned himself in earlier that morning. Hearing this, Irene is left stunned. She doesn't know whether to feel comforted or broken, conflicted by the flood of emotions rushing through her. The story then fast forwards 5 years. Irene is now thriving. She's taken up a role as a swimming coach and seems at peace with herself. One afternoon, she's seen spending time with her younger stepsister, Pam, and it's obvious the two have grown close, sharing laughter and warmth. As they stroll through the town together, Irene suddenly freezes. Across the street, she spots a newly opened restaurant. Its name immediately catches her eye and her breath. It's the very same name she once jokingly came up with for a restaurant years ago, in a moment she shared with someone she thought she had left behind. The scene shifts inside the restaurant. Michael is hard at work, focused on renovations, dust on his hands, and hope in his eyes. Then he hears footsteps approaching. He turns around, and there she is. Irene stands quietly in the doorway, her presence unexpected but powerful. Michael's expression softens as tears build in his eyes. The years haven't erased his feelings. Irene looks at him, then slowly offers a small, genuine smile. No words are spoken, but in that smile is forgiveness, healing, and the possibility of a new beginning. And that brings us to the end of The Man on the Road, a deeply emotional story about guilt, redemption, and the long road to healing. Irene's journey from pain and anger to forgiveness reminds us how the past may shape us, but it doesn't have to define us. What did you think about the ending? Do you think she truly forgave Michael? Or was it just closure? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this recap, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Starz Recapped for more emotional and thought-provoking movie breakdowns. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.